Think about an old, intricately drawn map. Not the digital map on your phone that just blinks blue dot at you while a robotic voice tells you to turn left.
Right, like an ancient maritime map.
Yeah, exactly. The kind with sea monsters drawn in the corners, wind currents sketched out in curling lines, and little warnings scribbled in the margins. We look at those maps today mostly as art.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
But back then, a sea monster drawn over a specific reef wasn't just a decoration. I mean, it meant shallow rocks here, your ship will sink.
Right. It was vital data.
Exactly. It didn't just give you a static location, it told you exactly how to navigate that specific world, what to fear, what to value, and basically how to survive it. And we often think of language as just a tool to point at things, a simple exchange of information.
Which is a very limited view, yeah.
But today, we're going to look at how a language is actually the map itself. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at something you use every single day, but probably rarely stop to truly examine.
Well, language is almost entirely invisible to us most of the time, precisely because we're always swimming in it.
Right.
But when you pause and look at the actual structure of a language, especially a heritage language that has been rooted deeply in a specific landscape for thousands of years, you start to see the architecture of an entire culture's reality.
And that is why today's deep dive is titled Language Carries a World, Understanding ACS A5. We've gathered this brilliant stack of sources on the table. We are looking at educational frameworks, curriculum design guides, and the Alaska cultural standards themselves.
It's a lot to dig into.
It is. And the goal here is to understand how language shapes reality. So whether you are a middle school student trying to figure out your place in the world, a family member helping with homework, an educator building a lesson plan, or just someone taking a walk through your local community, this deep dive is for you.
Yeah, and the foundational documents we are looking at are the Alaska Cultural Standards, which were designed by the Alaska Native Knowledge Network. They represent this absolutely fascinating philosophical shift in education.
How so?
Well, the core belief driving these standards is that a firm grounding in the heritage, language, and culture indigenous to a particular place is, frankly, an absolute prerequisite for developing a healthy, responsible human being.
Wow, an absolute prerequisite. Our mission today is to unpack Alaska Cultural Standard A5, often abbreviated as ACS A5 in accessible language. The standard states that students should reflect, through their own actions, the critical role that their local heritage language plays in fostering a sense of who they are and how they understand the world around them.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this. What does this standard actually mean when we take it out of the policy book and drop it into a real breathing community?
Well, to understand the practical application, we have to look at what the sources say a language actually contains. The core assertion across all these documents is that language carries much, much more than just vocabulary.
Right, it's not just a translation dictionary.
Exactly. It is not just a list of words you can swap out one for one with English words.
Wow.
Language holds identity.
Yeah.
It holds complex family relationships, place names, long-term histories, values, environmental knowledge, humor, specific responsibilities.
That's a lot.
It is. It holds entire ways of organizing human experience.
So you should almost think of a heritage language not as a basic dictionary, but as a massive zip file of intergenerational survival data and relationship maps. Like when you learn the word, you unzip centuries of continuous observation.
I love that. The source texts actually use a phrase very close to that idea. They explicitly describe heritage languages as complex taxonomical and ecological databases.
Oh, wow. Ecological databases.
Yeah. They encode deep spatial, biological, and physical understandings of local ecosystems. Because these languages were developed over thousands of years of empirical observation, the words themselves function as data points.
Let's crack open one of those data points then, because if I look at a map in English, I might see a place named after, whoever happened to sail a boat past it in the 1700s.
Right, like Cook Inlet or something.
Exactly. It doesn't tell me anything about the land itself.
Which contrasts sharply with the Tlingit name for Glacier Bay found in southeast Alaska. The Tlingit name is Sit-Itigay, and translated that means bay taking the place of the glacier.
Oh, wow. Wait, bay taking the place of the glacier. That isn't just a label. That implies movement. It implies a whole timeline.
Exactly. It acts as a long-term historical record of what scientists call geomorphological change, meaning, the physical shape of the Earth shifting over time.
Right.
It documents ecological succession. It tells whoever speaks the name that this landscape is highly dynamic. It records the retreat of the ice and the subsequent creation of a new habitat for forests and salmon.
That's incredible.
Right. If you only know the English name Glacier Bay, you just picture a static bay with a chunk of ice in it. The Tlingit name gives you the action, the history, and the environmental shift, all in one phrase.
The zip file analogy holds up. You learn the name, and you just download the geological history of the region. And our sources highlight another profound example of this from Central Alaskan Yupik, specifically regarding the terminology for ice and snow.
Yes.
Because if I'm looking at a frozen river, I just see ice. Maybe I'd call it thick ice or slushy ice if I'm being descriptive.
Central Alaskan Yupik terminology takes that visual observation and applies complex thermodynamics to it.
Seriously.
Seriously. The vocabulary doesn't just describe what the ice looks like. It changes based on physical safety, thickness, and melt rates. The words provide real-time data on travel safety.
Meaning, if a hunter uses a specific Yupik word for the ice condition, they aren't just saying the ice is white. They are communicating like, this ice is undergoing a thermodynamic transition because of the season, and it will not hold the weight of a sled.
Exactly. Which turns the noun into a literal survival instrument.
Yeah. So if your life depends on knowing exactly how thick the ice is in your specific bay, a curriculum that tries to generalize native knowledge across the whole state could be actively harmful.
Treating all Alaska Native cultures as a single homogeneous group is a major pedagogical error identified in the sources. It totally ignores the incredible diversity of languages, ecosystems, and traditions across Alaska's distinct regions.
Wait, if a curriculum is published for the whole state, isn't it tempting to just use one generalized example to save time? Like, from an educator's perspective, creating a dozen different versions sounds exhausting.
What's fascinating here is that generalizing actually erases the exact local knowledge the standard is trying to protect. You cannot drop a practice from the temperate rainforests of Southeast Alaska into an Athabascan classroom in the boreal forests of the interior.
Right. I want to use an analogy here to make this really concrete. It would be like assuming someone raised in the deep swamps of Florida has the exact same survival skills as someone raised in the deserts of Arizona, just because they're both North Americans.
All right, they're completely different environments.
If you drop a Florida survival guide into an Arizona classroom, you are going to confuse people.
And potentially put them in danger. The ecology is different, the survival strategies are different, and the language is entirely different.
Do the sources give a linguistic example of this?
They offer a really clear one. Imagine you are teaching a botany lesson about local plants. If you utilize the Tlingit terminology for a berry species, such as kanata for blueberry,
Yeah.
but you are teaching in a Yupik community on the western coast where the term quick is used, you are misrepresenting the local language.
Yeah.
You are telling the students that indigenous languages are interchangeable.
So the guidelines insist that statewide curriculum must be modular. Publishers can't just print one textbook with a generic Alaska Native perspective chapter. The curriculum has to provide a framework that allows individual communities to adapt the lesson to their specific bioregion, using the specific tribal group and language of that area.
Yes, it demands place-based specificity.
Yeah.
The curriculum must mirror the environment outside the classroom window.
So let's actually put ourselves inside that classroom for a minute. A modern middle school classroom is incredibly diverse. You have students whose families have lived on that exact land for 10,000 years, sitting next to students whose families moved to Alaska 6 months ago.
Exactly.
If ACS A5 requires students to reflect the critical role of the local heritage language, how does a teacher make this inclusive for every student without it feeling forced?
Well, the cultural standards address this brilliantly by recognizing that the application of the standard looks different depending on the student's relationship to the language.
Okay.
For students who are connected personally or culturally to the heritage language, meeting ACS A5 might involve actively learning to speak the language, using it in their projects, working to preserve it, or reflecting on it in their daily lives.
For those students, it elevates their home culture from something that Western education historically tried to suppress into a celebrated, vital cognitive asset. I mean, they get to build their identity around it. But for the students who are not members of that specific language community, what is their role? Do they just sit out?
Not at all. For non-connected students, the standard is equally important, but their role shifts from preservation to respect and support. It involves learning the respectful pronunciation of local words, understanding the deep historical importance of local place names, and recognizing the tangible effects of language loss on a community.
So they act as supporters of language revitalization. The sources mention non-connected students crediting local speakers when presenting data or supporting the public use of local names. Let's think of this like being a guest in someone's home.
Okay, I like that.
If I go to your house, I absolutely want to learn the house rules. I want to respectfully pronounce the names of my hosts. I want to appreciate the architecture, and I want to support the household. But I don't suddenly walk into the kitchen, rearrange the furniture, and claim I own the house.
Exactly. And taking that guest in a house idea a step further, part of being a guest is knowing that you're not the ultimate authority on how the house was built. Non-speaker teachers and students must never position themselves as language authorities.
Which means if I am a non-speaker teacher incorporating local terminology into a science lesson, I shouldn't just be guessing at translations or sounding things out based on English phonetics.
The documents heavily emphasize using community-approved resources for that exact reason. Teachers should be working with bilingual district staff or consulting repositories like the Alaska Native Language Center at the University of Alaska Fairbanks or the Silaska Heritage Institute.
Right.
Those organizations provide authoritative dictionaries and audio guides to ensure correct orthography and pronunciation.
Let's break down that term orthography really quickly. We are talking about the standardized spelling systems, right? Because many of these languages were historically oral, so the spelling systems were designed by linguists and community members specifically to capture sounds that don't exist in English.
Right. Mispronouncing or misspelling the words unintentionally corrupts the language. Using the approved orthography is a sign of academic rigor. And another inclusive practice for all students mentioned in the sources is achieving epistemological parity.
Okay, let's translate epistemological parity into plain English.
Fair enough.
It essentially means putting different ways of knowing on equal footing, right?
Exactly. The curriculum design guides give the example of placing heritage terms right alongside Latin and English in science diagrams. So if a class is studying marine biology, they don't just label a diagram with the Latin name for a bearded seal. They include the Inupiaq term ugruk.
Oh. Or if they're studying paleontology, placing the dinosaur name Ugrunaluk right alongside Edmontosaurus. Visually, on the poster board, you are showing students that the indigenous taxonomical system is just as rigorous and scientifically valid as the Western one.
Yes. By doing that, every student in the room, regardless of their personal heritage, learns that science is conducted in multiple languages and multiple cultural contexts. It expands everyone's worldview.
Being a respectful guest also means knowing which rooms are off limits, though. I want to throw out a hypothetical scenario based on the sources.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine a 7th grader is doing a presentation on a local mountain. They do a web search, find a beautifully translated traditional story about the spiritual significance of that mountain, copy it, and paste it right into their slide deck. Why might that actually be a violation of the cultural standard?
That scenario gets right to the heart of a major theme in the curriculum design guides: ethical boundaries. Engaging with heritage languages requires adhering strictly to principles like cause no harm and free, prior, and informed consent, often abbreviated as FPIC.
Right, because in the internet age, we are conditioned to believe that all information is public, searchable, and free for the taking.
But indigenous knowledge systems often operate under a very different paradigm. Knowledge is frequently viewed as a sacred ecological order with reciprocal obligations, not as a public commodity. Therefore, students and teachers must respect strict boundaries around certain words, stories, or traditional teachings.
Some knowledge is sacred. Some knowledge is owned by a specific family lineage. Some stories are only meant to be told during the winter when snow is on the ground. You can't just extract it for a middle school slide deck without explicit permission.
Exactly. The matrix for instructional agency in our sources divides this up clearly. A teacher can independently use published, vetted materials from authorized native sources. However, if they want to record local oral testimonies or document specific family-owned subsistence harvest locations, they must have explicit, written informed consent or tribal council approval.
And some things are strictly prohibited no matter what. Like you cannot incorporate sacred or ceremonial practices into a public school lesson. You cannot disclose the precise GPS locations of rare medicinal plants or key hunting areas.
Right. This prevents the misappropriation of intellectual property and protects local resources. If a student or teacher asks a local elder for a story, and the elder says, no, that story is not for public use, accepting that boundary is a valid educational part of meeting the standard.
So what does this all mean for the student who hits that boundary? If I'm a non-connected student trying to engage deeply with ACS A5, but I encounter a wall where local knowledge is restricted, how do I still fulfill the standard?
That is where the inward reflection part of Standard A5 is so powerful. If you cannot or should not access certain external local knowledge, you can meet this standard by looking at your own background. The curriculum guide suggests students can document their own family language history or create what they call a cultural atlas.
I love the mechanics of the cultural atlas idea. Let's walk through how that actually works. Let's say my family immigrated from the Philippines or from Ireland. How does mapping my own family's history help me respect an Alaska Native cultural standard?
It's all about comparative analysis. Students map their own physical and cultural lineage. They examine how their family's heritage language, whether that is Tagalog, Gaelic, or English, expresses relationships to land or kinship.
Right.
For instance, they might look at how their language names uncles and aunts or how it describes weather patterns.
And then they compare those linguistic structures to whatever public vetted information exists about the local Alaska Native language.
Yes, by analyzing how their own language shapes their ancestors' reality, they mechanically understand how land, language, and identity intertwine. It builds a deep structural empathy. They develop intercultural competency without ever crossing ethical boundaries into restricted indigenous knowledge.
It brings the abstract concept down to a personal reality. True engagement means listening carefully. It means seeking guidance from culture bearers. And it means realizing that holding back, respecting a boundary is an act of profound engagement.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, respecting these boundaries is an active demonstration of supporting community sovereignty. Historically, Western educational and research institutions have a dark legacy of extractive and exploitative practices in indigenous communities.
Right, taking the knowledge purely as data, stripping it of its cultural context, putting it in a textbook, and giving absolutely nothing back to the community that generated it.
So when a middle school science class practices free, prior, and informed consent, or when they take the time to use the correct orthography for a local place name, or when a student intentionally keeps a sensitive harvest location out of their public nature journal, they are engaging in a restorative practice.
They are actively repairing that historical relationship between the school and the community. It elevates language from just being a list of vocabulary words on a worksheet to being an active practice of respect and relationship building.
Exactly. It ensures that the knowledge remains connected to the people and the places where it was generated. It acknowledges that the heritage language is not a relic, it is alive.
Let's bring this all back to you, listening right now. Why does this deep dive matter to your daily life? Well, whether you are prepping a science lesson plan on local ecosystems, helping a middle schooler navigate their homework, or you are just taking a walk through your neighborhood, you are interacting with layers of language. Every place name, every descriptor of the weather, every term for a local animal has a history stretching back millennia.
To synthesize what we've explored today, language is a living, incredibly precise ecological database. Alaska's languages are beautifully diverse, and they are intricately tailored to their specific bioregions. They cannot be generalized.
And everyone, no matter their background or where they come from, has a role to play in this standard. If you are connected to the local heritage language, your role is to learn it, preserve it, and use it as a foundation for your identity.
And if you are not from that language community, your role is to be a respectful guest. You learn proper pronunciation, you understand the importance of local names, and you support the language's revitalization without ever claiming ownership of it.
We navigate these spaces with humility, adhering to principles of informed consent, and recognizing that boundaries around knowledge are a sign of respect. Think back to that intricately drawn maritime map we talked about at the very beginning, the one with the currents, the depths, and the stories in the margins. When you look at the landscape around you through the lens of a local heritage language, you aren't just seeing a blank space waiting for an English label. You are seeing the map as it was drawn by thousands of years of human experience, survival, and profound observation. You are seeing the world as it truly is in high definition.
It changes not just what you call the world, but how you perceive and interact with everything in it.
As we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final thought to mull over on your own. It's the exact question posed by the curriculum designers to the students, and it's a question we should all carry with us. How does language shape what people notice, remember, value, and understand?